Welcome to White Pill Radio, the roughly every other episode version of Theology on Air, which is an outgrowth of Theology by the Pint. To learn more about Theology by the Pint, go to theologybythepint.org and learn about our events where we gather around craft beer and talk about theology and ethics and politics and all sorts of interesting things, have some fascinating events coming up. So if you want a good reason to get out of the house, hang around cool people, drink beer, go to theologybythepint.org and learn more about what we do. But this particular version of our podcast is basically looking at news and current events through a Christian worldview. This is the post-apologetic, ultimately hopeful, applied theology show that looks at the spiciest, most relevant topics, and we try to put a positive spin on it, although I will admit I'm not always very good at doing that. But I like to say that this is blessed talk, not happy talk. Did I get that right? Yes, blessed, not... Yes, anyway, blessed talk, not happy talk. So thanks for listening. I'm Evan McClanahan. I happen to be the pastor at First Lutheran Church, and with me, pretty much as always, is Ken.
Hi, I'm Ken. I'm an accountant.
Yes, and he won't tell us where he works. He's going to keep that secret, so his job remains secure. But you can see Ken at Theology by the Pint events, so we encourage you to do that. And Sarah couldn't be here, and a lot of our regulars couldn't be here, so we said, it's just going to be the two of us. So maybe we'll get done a lot quicker.
Maybe.
We'll see. But anyway, a lot to talk about this week, so let's dive in. There was an interesting kind of brouhaha between Trump. He gave a talk at some... that's President Trump. I don't know. Maybe you've heard of him. But he gave a talk to some governors recently. Tell us about it, Ken.
So the governor of Maine, during one of Trump's press conferences, before I get into the story, I do want to, give a criticism sandwich to Trump, right? Oh. Where you take compliment, criticism, compliment. I like that his administration says they're going to be transparent, right?
Yep.
The criticism is that we have these, hour and a half long press conferences where he manages to say a lot of nothing. But the other side of the criticism sandwich is, I like that we're at least having this many press conferences with the president himself rather than some random press secretary. It is nice to have at least visibility on an administration, if not the type of transparency I would like. So, during one of these press conferences...
Well, yeah, it was like a meeting with governors.
Yeah.
But yeah, and press was there. I don't know if it was a press conference. I saw something today where at this time in Obama's administration, 30 days in or something, he had taken something like 166 questions, and Trump has taken over 1,000.
And so Trump has probably answered less questions than Obama, but we all know Obama and his press secretary never really answered any questions either. So,
well, there used to be that sitcom. It was called Spin City, I think, or something.
Okay.
I don't know, but anyway, the whole we understand they're always putting things in the best possible light, or figuring out ways to not answer. I don't know. I actually do, taking a non-cynical view, I actually do think that this administration is about as transparent as you can be. There's these people actually complaining that people will point out to Doge, hey, this is going on, and within a few hours it's fixed. For example, related to this article, Libs of TikTok. You should know. Everyone should know who that is. Pointed out that the FAFSA application, that's your student loan application when you're in college, it still had other options other than male or female on applications. They pointed it out within 5 hours. Okay, people making phone calls and from vacation and stuff like that. It got fixed.
That is one of the lowest priority items on my bucket, on my to-do list when talking about FAFSA and government aid going straight to the university system. Yeah, I don't like that. Right?
Wait, you're saying you're talking about the male-female aspect of it, or the?
No, I'm saying the money is way, way, way more important than what box you're checking.
Oh,
right?
Gotcha.
Honestly, I wish that box wasn't even there. Right?
Well, maybe when the Department of Education is abolished, there won't be.
Why does FAFSA? Why does the federal government need to know what gender somebody applying for federal aid is?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Well, why is that box even there?
Why do they need to know what race they are either?
Why are any of those boxes there?
There was an interesting story. We're totally off the rails now. We'll get back. There was another interesting story I read this week about a young Asian young man. I don't know if he's Chinese or Japanese or what. Anyway, but he got a 1590 on his SAT. Graduated first in his class. All this kind of stuff. He got rejected to every school in California. He applied to like 5 California universities, didn't get into any of them.
Checked a different box. And,
yes, he was offered a job by Google when he was like, no, I don't know about the different box, but he was offered a job by Google when he was 13.
Okay.
Like, literally like a genius coder, programmer, got a PhD level job when he graduated high school at the age of 18, and he's suing all these schools, and that case is making its way through the court so people know about it. But in that case, he's arguing he was discriminated against because he was Asian American.
I wish somebody had the guts to just check all of the boxes and just see what happens. Yeah. Right? Is it a crime? I don't think so, but we'll see. Yeah. Anyways, okay. Back on track. During one of these press conferences or the meeting with the governors that was publicized and press was there and they were taking videos and all that, the governor of Maine got into a little brouhaha with President Trump. It was around transgender like athletes competing in women's sports in was it collegiate or varsity level?
I think this was
not
like,
sure.
Yeah, like high school.
But they mentioned NCAA though. Not sure.
Well, he was saying that the NCAA had made the change, given his executive order, and then he was saying, and now the states need to follow up.
Right. Yeah. So I mentioned in the chat that, hey, this checks all the boxes. Limited government. It checks the transgender stuff that we're mandated to talk about every week. It checks the, Trump says something and then maybe walks it back later. It checks all the boxes. Trump says, is the governor of Maine here. She replies, I'm here. He says, are you not going to comply with it? Meaning the executive order mandating that all states not have transgender individuals compete in women's sports. And she says, I'm complying with state and federal laws. Trump responded, we are the federal law. She said, we're going to follow the law. He said, you'd better comply. Otherwise, you're not going to get any federal funding. She said, we'll see you in court. And Trump said, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. This should be an easy one.
Yeah. So what is that? Is that a threat? Is he overstepping his bounds? Let me say this. This is something I've thought about this whole Doge, because as many other people have said, and I've said it on this show before, we are living through a kind of almost experiment where Trump is, he would say, reclaiming the rightful authority of the executive branch. So. What did that hurt?
The rightful. Okay, keep going.
Well, think of what is his cabinet? His cabinet is what? 15 secretaries of 15 departments. Those are all under the executive branch. Think of almost every agency you're aware of, any of us have ever heard of, and the hundreds we're not aware of. They all fall under those departments. So the massive amount of what we consider the federal government, most of which is unconstitutional and should not exist at all, is under the executive branch.
Right.
So the Department of Justice, that is under the executive branch, but the judicial, the court system, for example, does not oversee the housing and urban development, whatever, or whatever. And the legislative branch doesn't oversee these agencies. It might fund them, but it doesn't oversee them. So what he is basically doing is he is saying, arguably, as Jeffrey Tucker said the other day, for the first time since like 1883, he is basically saying, hey, these things are under my purview. They're under the executive branch, and I'm going to do them. And Doge is a way of figuring out where money is going and inefficiencies and things like that. And I would argue that it was probably the Watergate scandal where especially with the Department of Justice, where you got this bifurcation or separation between the executive branch and things within the executive branch, like the Attorney General. So the Attorney General sort of was turned against the president, Nixon in that case, for political purposes, we would argue. And I think that is the case. He is sort of claiming, no, these are all things. So this is what I would say to all the people who grew government through these agencies, under these departments, all within the executive branch. You live by the sword, you die by the sword.
So turnabout is fair play.
Yes. So if you want these things to be easily implemented by a president or an executive branch, then they can be easily defunded or taken away or reduced in scope and size and so on and so forth. So I don't really think there's a lot of complaining about it, but I don't think you really have a right to complain.
Well, I mean, this exchange isn't exactly a retreat back to the the 10th Amendment, right?
Yeah.
The 9th and 10th Amendments and like all the powers not retained by the federal government, right?
Great point. So here's what I would say.
Sure.
Trump isn't violating Maine's rights. He's taking away their money. So 40% of Texas's budget comes from the federal government.
Okay.
So as long as states take federal money, they're not really free to begin with. So I think that's a big problem that like states need to solve. They need to wean themselves. Now, a lot of that are things like probably Medicaid money that comes back, or Department of Education money that funds the schools and locale. I don't know.
And the biggest Medicaid and Medicare are going to dwarf.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so.
Department of Education.
But does he have the right? So this would be a question. Does the executive branch, would any executive have the right in this case to not send money to Maine if they are not complying with an executive order?
Isn't that the story the Daily Wire broke about the hurricane relief in North Carolina? Right? That FEMA was passing up houses or blocks that they considered to be, political rivals.
Yeah, but
right. I mean, if the federal government, anybody from the president all the way down to some just bureaucrat middle manager in one of these agencies, right, has the right to say, hey, I don't agree with this, political rival. Yeah. Therefore, I'm going to use my power, that was stolen from that rival. It was ultimately taxed from that rival. Yeah. And I'm going to weaponize that power by withholding aid. The Trump with the California wildfires and Biden with the hurricanes, right? I don't like when Biden does it. I don't like when Trump does it. Right?
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with you about the, that states need to wean themselves off of federal funding.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of the things he says, for example, he says, we are the federal law.
That was the one that it really got inside my armor.
And he often says things that are sort of true but clumsy, and I think this might be one of those. I mean, obviously,
I am the Senate.
Yeah,
yeah.
Is that from Star Wars?
Have you not seen Star Wars?
Yeah, I have, but I don't remember. I kind of slept through the bureaucratic, finagling scenes. But anyway,
you guys get that reference?
Yeah. But is it the law? I don't know. I don't know if executive orders are a law.
We saw Schoolhouse Rock. That's not how laws are made.
I have not seen that.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. You don't know Schoolhouse Rock? Oh, dude.
Is that with Jack Black?
No. It's educational cartoons from before I was a kid, but we played them all the time. Yeah.
Well, what was Jack Black in? School of Rock.
School of Rock. No, Schoolhouse Rock.
Oh, okay.
Teaches about pronouns and prepositions and conjunctions for the literature and English stuff. And then in the government, there's a famous one is a bill telling little Jimmy, hey, this is how a bill becomes a law.
Yeah.
Right? Which is not what executive orders do. Executive orders just happen.
Well, okay, here's another example. I don't think the relief thing is necessarily a fair example, because it's not really a policy. Like, people are in an emergency. It shouldn't matter what sign they have in their yard. But that said, a better example would be Biden threatened to withhold funding for schools' lunches if they didn't allow boys in girl sports, for example. And so I think Trump said that's the precedent you set. Like you said, turnabout is fair play. So I think that not you, but one doesn't have the right to complain if they were fine with those tactics when one group of people did it, now that he is doing it. What would be better?
Unless you're principled.
So
right. If you're principled, then you do have a right to complain.
Okay.
Hey, I complain when they do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. You say, you don't have a right to complain.
No, I'm saying you don't have a right.
The hypocrites don't have a right to complain, but the principled, of course.
Yes. As long as you complain before, you can complain now. So yeah, that's fair. I would say it's kind of crazy how this boys and girls sports has become this
wedge.
This wedge, and just in Maine, I mean, just this week, I mean, it probably gained notoriety because of this exchange in part. But there was a boy who was an average pole vaulter who won the state championship in pole vaulting this week. So it's still going on in Maine, and I will say that viscerally, I am virulently opposed to men. Or no question. I understand we have a thing about the Olympic boxer and how XXXY chromosomes and abnormalities and stuff. But, a boy growing long hair like Leah Thomas, et cetera, William Thomas, this is, I think it's so totally wrong and so totally unfair to girls, especially if something like scholarships are on the line. That I'm actually okay in this point, at this case, using the bully pulpit, because I think what is being done is such a visceral wrong. I think at some point you do get down to issues where it's like, you have to appeal to kind of a deep-seated understanding of worldview, and you have to exploit that. And in Joe Biden's case, his worldview is fundamentally wrong, and in Trump's case, his worldview is fundamentally right. And so the exercise of power is valid in one case and not in the other because of the worldview question.
Okay, but this isn't the bully pulpit. Right? What is the bully
I
pulpit?
don't know. This is the definition of bully pulpit.
No,
He's standing
well, it's
behind
the
a
definition
lectern saying to the Maine, I'm going to see you in court.
It's the definition of a bully, right?
Yeah,
the
yeah.
bully pulpit is saying that, like, the president's cultural power can drive either institutions or, right. But this isn't like, just his presence, not his political power, his cultural power. Just his presence is enough to move the tide of culture and other political without actually doing executive orders. This is an executive order. This is a we'll see you in court. This is the I am the law.
And ultimately, we might as well have we need a case like this to go to court, because I think we're going to have issues like this come up where, the executive branch is saying we're not going to do this anymore, and the states are saying, yes, you are. And so we'll see. We'll see who's right. I would say this, though, just to close this out. I had a thought, and it just passed my mind. Dead air. I can't think of it. I'll have to come back to it. But yes, that is an interesting story. We'll see how it resolves. I think I was going to say as a white pill, if the Department of Education truly is ended, and local governments have to fund their own schools and things like that, maybe we can get back to the real sense where states are kind of experiments. And if the people can democratically vote for a governor of a state who says we're going to put boys and girls sports, then by all means,
Vote with your feet.
run on that.
Right.
Yeah. Say you're going to do that. I don't know many people who, I don't know of anyone who voted for putting boys and girls sports or vice versa. There are never any girls and boys sports, but you get the idea. They just kind of did it almost by fiat. So let's decentralize education. Let's see what happens. Let's get it down to the most local level possible. Homeschool your kids. Let's get it down to the most local level possible and see where the chips fall. See if people want boys and girls sports.
And if you want a UIL or a scholastic league that will let your kids compete, why do we only have one for the state of Texas? Right? If you want a league that allows, transgender kids in women's sports, right? Then have another league that says, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And let 1,000 flowers bloom.
1,000 flowers bloom. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, this was an interesting article for a lot of reasons. Okay, this was a post made by Jeff Bezos and then a reply that I thought was interesting. I'll try to summarize it, but basically Jeff Bezos, who you may know is the founder of Amazon, and he bought the Washington Post, and immediately when he bought it, he said democracy dies in darkness. That became the tagline on their mast. I know because I did the Washington Post crossword puzzle, and every single day I did the crossword puzzle, I saw that democracy dies in darkness. Anyway, he said, I'm letting you know about a change to our opinion pages. We're going to be writing, he posted this on X like 2 days ago. We're going to be writing every day in support and defense of two pillars, personal liberties and free markets. Whoa! Jeff Bezos is Milton Friedman all of a sudden. He's
of the sudden.
Mr. Libertarian. Isn't that amazing? Trump gets elected, and he's like, yeah, this guy's pretty popular. I think the winds are shifting away from, DEI, CRT, heavy-handed government policy. People actually want freedom again. I'm going to go with that. Anyway, he kind of gives his reasons for it. And so what he's prescribing there, though, is what I would generally characterize as something like a libertarian point
Hey,
of
guys.
view.
Sarah Stone here. Sorry to interrupt what I'm sure is a riveting podcast episode, but Theology by the Pint needs your help to continue providing these podcasts, offering our in-person events, and growing so we can bring thoughtful conversation and the hope of the gospel to a world that's increasingly walking away from church and from faith. Now that we're a 501c3 nonprofit, all donations are tax deductible, so we've crunched the numbers, and if each listener of this episode gave just $1 for each episode you listen to, we'd put a huge dent in our annual budget. So consider giving today. Go to theologybythepint.org/give and click the link to donate. Thanks so much, and now back to our show.
He basically, talks about how, newspapers Well, he says, I am of America and for America and proud to be so. So therefore, he's kind of connecting the understanding of America to personal liberty and free markets, which I don't disagree with. However, there's something more. There was a response from a guy I've never heard of named Pascal Emmanuel Gobry. He sounds like a French philosopher. And he said this: personal liberties did not make America great, and there's nothing intrinsically American about them. These began to be pushed into law largely by unelected judges in the late 60s when America was already a superpower and, as you know, well on its way to landing on the moon and arguably more confident, more forward-looking, friendlier to technology and science and innovation than today. So let me just stop there. I think there is an interesting and legitimate philosophical question as to what America is. What is the character of America? If you think about our founding, what were we trying to accomplish? What do our founding documents give rise to? Certainly something like a free market system, although there is something called the American system, which may not necessarily be laissez-faire economics or a pure free market or something like that. The question of which central bank or how a central bank might work in early America was debated arguably for 100 years. Hamilton had a notion of a central bank. Andrew Jackson killed a second central bank. Now we're stuck with the Federal Reserve. Anyway, but the point is that I think it's hard to argue that America was definitely founded to give human beings, individuals, personal liberties, a right to pursue, happiness. And certainly, and generally speaking, free markets. But were we more than that? This man's argument is going to be that personal liberties came about as a phrase in the 60s that is sort of an abuse of liberty because it came to be seen as someone's right to do what they want to do, not living in a virtuous way. Okay. So that's a kind of another pillar that you might say undergirds what America is this notion of virtue, a decidedly Christian understanding of the way the world works, and the right and ability to pursue that, but also having the personal, restraint to pursue that fully. Wow. He says this. During the time when America grew from a handful of colonies to a world-bestriding colossus, just to take a few examples, no-fault divorce was illegal in all states, abortion was illegal in all states, blasphemy laws were blessed by the Supreme Court. This is not to argue for or against those policies, just to note that it's ahistorical and inaccurate to equate, quote, personal liberty with, quote, the American idea. It's also insulting to the 150 or so million American Christians who belong to faith traditions that did a lot more to make America great than post-60s liberalism. And so it's an interesting point, which is to say, and I do think that this is a major potential split. If there are any kind of traditional kind of liberal, leftist Democrats out there kind of listening to this who are kind of going, when is this whole MAGA thing, which is very strong right now and is a coalition of many factors that are pulling in a lot of directions, working together. So what Trump has created is pretty impressive. And you're wondering, how are they going to break up? This is the fissure. Okay, so if I had a prediction of where MAGA is going to fall apart, it's because, on the one hand, people understand MAGA to be a libertarian understanding of government where we are championing personal liberty, which could include celebrating abortion, for example, or gay marriage, for example, and free markets, which, as you and I have talked about, there's free markets and fair markets,
But I repeat myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's where we disagree.
Yeah. And on the other hand, there are conservative Christians. A lot of Christians who have sort of held their nose and voted for Trump multiple times, even though he's an imperfect person, because they like his policies. And, just at his cabinet meeting yesterday, it opened with a prayer. And I thought that was actually pretty interesting.
But it wasn't the TBN girl, right?
No, Paula White. No, we should talk about that. She is pretty terrible.
She was the one that he chose to be the head of.
Oh, I know. Paula White's pretty awful. No, it was the secretary of HUD.
Okay.
That's Housing and Urban Development, I believe, and who is a former pastor.
Oh.
Which, by the way, I have a story about Raphael Warnock I want to get to. Okay. Personal story. If we have time before that, I think you might find interesting. Anyway. So there was a prayer before that cabinet meeting, which I thought was interesting. I mean, I do think there's a legitimate Christian voice in the administration.
You're familiar with the political compass, right?
No.
Where you've got authoritarian, libertarian, right? And then economic left and economic right?
Yeah.
Right?
Vaguely.
Vaguely.
Okay.
Like the idea would be,
Say a listener's not, and you have to explain it.
So it's the 4-quadrant blue, red, yellow, green matrix, where you plot authoritarian is at the north, libertarian is at the south, or anarchic if you prefer that. And then at the left, obviously, is left-wing economics, and at the right is a more right-wing. So your Nazi Germany is going to be kind of center authoritarian.
Oh, okay.
Right? Your Marxist Soviet Union is going to be far left, far authoritarian. Somebody like Ludwig von Mises is probably going to be far right libertarian.
So like a Milton Friedman would be, far on the liberty side and far on the right-wing economic side.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, and it seems like
Assuming right-wing economics means free markets.
right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Right-wing economics would be
Because right-wing politics, fascist, would be, government control of.
and that would be further up the authoritarian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, and I hate the right versus left spectrum because where do you put somebody like an anarchist? Anarchists have been communists and like anarcho-capitalists like throughout all of human history, and like don't really fit on a left-right paradigm.
Yeah.
So getting back to this, right? There's the whole cultural spectrum, which is completely independent from that chart, right?
Yeah.
It's neither economic. The cultural spectrum could say, what do I use government to make illegal? But it's not going to say like what I prefer. Me personally, I'm a teetotaler who is basically pro-legalization and decrim of every drug you can think of. But I'm a teetotaler. I don't drink. Am I conservative, or am I like very libertine?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of both. But I was going to ask you about the late '60s. That post '60s liberalism that Mr. Emmanuel Gobry is complaining about. Right. I mean, I can think of something that happened in the late '60s that might have impacted me personally. Right. Had I been born before then, had my wife and I tried to get married before then, we couldn't have.
Oh, yeah.
Loving versus Virginia was like late 60s.
Yeah. You're talking about the ability to marry someone of a different race.
At the time, all the Christian conservatives in like the South would have all of these things he's talking about, the same ones that are no-fault divorce.
We might as well just bring up slavery too, because
No. Every abolitionist movement started with Christians
or Unitarians. A lot of them were actually Unitarians, not Trinitarian Christians, but that's okay.
Sure.
We'll take what we can get.
Yeah, but like every abolitionist movement across the world started out as Christian. Now, yes, Christians were slavery, but like if you look in the American '60s, right, and you look at these blasphemy laws, you look at the no-fault divorce laws, you look at like everything he's talking about, those are the same people.
Yeah.
That are pushing Loving versus Virginia.
Yeah.
Or sorry, that are opposing Loving versus Virginia.
Yeah.
Right?
I
you know where they stand on the Scopes monkey trial. You know, in the late 60s, right, a lot of things happened that this guy probably, I'm not saying whether I agree with it or not, you know where he lies.
Yeah, well, yes, but I think that you can be a Christian today who basically says we need to have, say, traditional values, not the values of post-60s and beyond America, and also it's okay for black people to marry white people, I think that's possible. I think that what he's arguing sort of prevailed is a libertine understanding of personal freedom, right, or personal liberty. And I think that there's a constrained understanding of liberty that is necessary in a free society. The whole John Adams quote about this government is only suitable to a moral,
righteous and moral people. Yeah.
And
however, prohibition was not a bunch of secular, philosophers that pushed prohibition.
Yeah.
It was the Christians.
Yeah.
And we do this thing called that doesn't have
I think we should have theology by the root beer and go back to prohibition myself.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, do you drink?
Yes. I'm joking, but I will say this. I do get a little tired of of everyone looking at something like prohibition and just having this knee-jerk thing, oh, that was the dumbest thing ever. No, it wasn't the dumbest thing ever. Alcohol is a pretty awful thing, and sometimes I think that we don't know how to control ourselves, and it's probably silly to think that we can contain it or that we understand it gives rise to black markets and NASCAR.
Are the alternatives worse?
The alternatives of
to legalized alcohol, are they worse? Is prohibition worse than?
I don't know. I don't know. Was Al Capone that bad? I don't know. Like look at the gangs we have now. I think Al Capone looks pretty modest by all
but we don't have gangs surrounding alcohol now, right? Anheuser-Busch doesn't have a gang, right?
No. But I'm saying that people.
What are the gangs we have now selling?
Fentanyl.
Illegal drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just legalize them. That would make it no.
But hold on. That is kind of my argument, though. Is when you make something criminal, then only dangerous criminals can engage in that market, like raw milk.
Okay.
There was a New England story about this lady who sold raw milk at a farmer's market. Some dude walked up.
Shame on her.
Some dude walked up, took like all 6 canisters, right, loaded them in his truck, and walked away. And she's like, "Can I call the cops? Can I do anything about this?" And I was like, "Lady, you're not allowed to sell that."
Oh.
And I was like, "Wait, so you mean just a criminal can just walk up and steal my stuff? Do you have any recourse?" No.
Okay. So my argument against legalization of drugs is that which you condone is it's a you're giving your morals. The state is giving moral support to that which is legal, and so that would make I don't like that.
The state gives moral support to that which it.
If you say it's legal, you're saying it's good. Now, Paul, of course, says that all things are lawful, but not all things are good. But I think, generally speaking, we say that things are illegal because they are bad, because they are not conducive to a flourishing society. And so, when you say heroin is legal or prostitution is legal, sure, it does take away perhaps some elements of organized crime or something like that. But I think that we're also saying we're sending a signal to the citizenry who ought to know better but doesn't, that it's okay to do those drugs, and I think that would be far worse, than the other. I'm on the Singapore. I want to copy and paste Singapore's drug laws into America. Literally copy and paste into the code. If you have 5 ounces of this, you're a dealer. There's a good chance you get the death penalty.
Do you? Death penalty. All right, we talked about death penalty with Max before. Do you think, Singapore. I was going to say, do you think we can do Singapore with a multicultural society? I don't think you can. I think one of the benefits of multiculturalism is all of the different varieties of like things you get exposed to. But the counter to that is going to be you can't have a country like Singapore where everyone agrees with the exact same culture.
No, I understand. The more monolithic you are and the smaller you are, the easier you are to sort of govern, you might say, and that's fine. But I don't know. I think where there's a will, there's a way.
But you mentioned the government condones that which it makes legal, right? You call moral that which you make legal.
Well, I'm not saying absolutely. I'm saying generally speaking, to the average person, it's like, well, the government says I can do it, so it must be fine. The government says I can smoke pot, so it must be fine. Meanwhile, we got a bunch of schizoids out there, who are potheads, smoking very powerful, marijuana that they think there's nothing wrong with it, and there is something wrong with it.
I mean, my rebut, which is going to be the alcoholic dad, which your retort is going to be Singapore. So,
Singapore alcoholic. Say flesh it out.
So, I'm pretty sure that to have enough. I'm not exactly sure about Singapore's alcohol laws. But I'm probably sure that you can't get toasted in public, right?
Yeah. I don't know. You get caned probably if you do.
So. It's crazy. But so forget Singapore. In Evan's world.
And they also have beautiful airports there. And clean streets. Sounds good to me. I'm of the school that says I'm a rule follower. I'm happy to follow the rules, and I want to live in a clean environment, in a safe environment for my kids. So I don't mind a strong government in that regard. I think that there should be almost no tolerance for rule breakers and law breakers. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that's right. I mean, I think it's right, but a lot of other people say yes, but that restricts personal freedoms. People don't have the right to spit gum on the sidewalk. Well, no, they do not.
Well, but the government, and maybe your retort is, well, not my government, but like government schools are probably there's like prisons for children, and like probably the only time most people in the country will encounter violence in their entire lives. It's the only time I've ever encountered violence was in public schools.
Well, we should abolish those too.
Well, wait, I thought you want a very strict top-down society. I'm pretty sure Singapore does not have.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it was an interesting exchange, and I think Jeff Bezos now, and maybe the Joe Rogans now, that kind of class of people who are kind of our thought leaders, but who are not explicitly Christian. And on the other hand, there are many thought leaders that are explicitly Christian. J.D. Vance, I don't know, Charlie Kirk. I'm thinking of kind of figures on the right, kind of influencers, Jack Posobiec.
Well, you're saying this is the rift that's going to split those two apart.
I'm not saying it will. I'm saying that's the fissure line. If there's an earthquake within sort of the MAGA world, if you want this coalition that looks poised to govern for a very long time, because the left seems to have sort of no energy at this point, no ideas. I mean, they're literally saying, "Oh no, they're going to shrink the IRS."
Yeah,
that's not a winning argument.
No,
I also think that there could be a big old look-see into certain elections. There's a case in Florida right now that has found something like 500,000 mail-in by vote. This is a local House race that went for a Democrat on mail-in ballots, and this is in Florida, which supposedly has the cleanest rolls and the best election processes
also
of
the
anybody.
oldest people. The most house-ridden people.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. Well, again, they're looking into it, and we'll see how that case goes. But there are people who are saying that case could open the door to Trump getting what he wants, which are federal elections being same-day, paper ballots, etc. And if federal elections, and the federal government can tell states how to run federal elections. They can do that. They've done it before, because we used to have machines, different machines, and then we got different. Anyway, so there is a concern. Let me put it this way. The left, I think, is in political dire straits because I think that they benefit from certain voting practices, to put it nicely, that get them certain number of votes that they otherwise might not get. And right now, they don't have many issues.
What are you talking about, like gerrymandering or?
Gerrymandering doesn't help. Both sides do that.
Yeah, gerrymandering doesn't really help either party. Right.
Yeah,
it's always a tug of war.
Well, the census helps Democrats right now, as we talked about before,
Sure.
because a lot of people are counted in California that I don't think should be. But no, I
Probably in Texas too.
I'll just be blunt. Election fraud. I think there's a lot of election fraud that, from what I can tell, favors the left, and that's just my opinion. So people can disagree with that, but I think maybe in the next year or two, we're going to find out if that's the case. But the idea, I don't think the left has many ideas. I think it's been a coalition built up on a lot of racial animus and the LGBT and energy and all. I think all that's sort of dissipating. I don't know what ideas the left is going to do because now they've got to win back people that they lost. That's really hard. The Joe Rogans, the Temples, and these are the people at the top, but all the people who listen to them, they've kind of gone over the Maha moms, right? The RFK moms that voted for him. All those people, they're kind of in the MAGA camp now. So you got to get them back. That's going to be hard. My point is that if that coalition is going to be broken up, this is the line. It's this line of this kind of libertarian conservatism that says that America is about freedom, and this other side that says you use freedom to pursue virtue. And because at some point you're going to have a moral split on these two sides, like the legalization of drugs or, certain free speech, or maybe pornography or something, these kinds of issues are could divide the right. So I think that Trump and, look at someone like an Elon Musk versus like a J.D. Vance. They're working together, or even like a Steve Bannon, throw him in there. They have very different points of view on a lot of topics, but right now they're working together. We'll see how long that lasts. But I think it's an interesting sort of a concept that was brought about. So anyway, our listeners have to decide for themselves sort of what is America, what are our ultimate values. That Twitter exchange, I think, brought that up.
We'll post it in the in the comments of this video.
I thought you wanted to talk about the gold card next.
Oh,
I had that next. Sorry.
Speaking of values, this conversation that we had reminded me of the tug of war between Elon and Vivek back when Vivek said, "Look, we need more Steve Urkels and less Stefans."
Yes,
right. Like the American ethos isn't like work hard, individualism, meritocracy. It's kind of gives me that right is the American ethos, and we should have meritocracy and H-1B visas for people that actually contribute. America got pretty upset about that. They said, no. We like DEI programs when it's for people born in America, right? It's only DEI for people born in America. It's not meritocracy globally. Well, speaking of meritocracy globally, this isn't exactly the same thing, but money might be an analog for success. Trump is offering gold cards, which will be very, very, very expensive, but that will offer a path to citizenship in a way that green cards don't. It's like green card premium or something like that. He said, they'll be very wealthy, they'll be very successful, they'll be spending a lot of money, paying a lot of taxes, and employing a lot of people. And we think it's going to be extremely successful. You don't like brain drain. What about capital drain? You don't like that either? I don't know how you feel about that.
I like it in the sense that it benefits our country to take the best from every country. I think that there are potential long-term downsides.
Okay.
We want the smartest people in, I don't know, Burma to stay in Burma and build up Burma, because then I think we'll, in the long run, be at peace. I mean, our goal is to not have another world war, right? Our goal is not to have some kind of nuclear conflict in the future. Like, we need to get along as a world, as a planet. I mean, that sounds idealistic and simple, but it's true. And so this idea that I understand why a president, why he thinks it's a good idea to say to the world, come, if you got the money and you can come in, which, by the way, is a totally like a massive contrast to literally opening the floodgates and just saying anyone who wants to come in, come in. He's saying, no. You want to come into this country, citizenship has a price. It has a premium. And by the way, this is a program that's existed. It was just at $900,000 in the past. You had to, it's like an EB-5 visa. It kind of doesn't work very well. So it's a similar idea. The funny thing is gold card visa. Everyone thinks of, credit card, right? Right. When you put those words together. Anyway. I mean, do I like the program? I mean, Trump legitimately said at a press conference the other day, he thinks that this could raise enough money to pay off the debt, or at least get us to a balanced budget.
Yeah. Juxtaposed to that, silly little poem at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty, right?
Right. Give us your tired and your... Well... What are you being sarcastic?
I am being a little tongue-in-cheek, yeah.
No, I mean,
the huddled masses is the cool thing about America is like, hey, we'll take, whatever you're not able to make successful, and we'll make it successful.
Yeah, I think that, as we've talked about before, though, you can't have an open immigration system and a welfare state. And we are now at a place where it's hard for us to absorb people who are net tax takers than taxpayers. So let's say someone comes here, and let's say they come here illegal, but they work. And let's say they get some kind of fake Social Security number and they pay into some kind of tax system or something. They're still using, on average, I've read an article about this, I don't remember the numbers, but they're using way more tax services than they are paying into taxes.
In terms of local schools and hospitals.
Yes,
average and stuff like
average cost to educate any student in America is $15,000 a year or something like that.
And
in some cities,
all
it's way
that
more.
money that we invested for them and send them back to their country with the American education.
No, I just say we don't invest it. I just say we don't invest it at all. That we seal the border. That we prioritize citizenship. I think Trump's point of view is, hey, this is the best economic market in the world by a long shot, and if you want to participate in it, it's going to cost you something, but you could get really rich in the process. So he views this is what the External Revenue Service as a replacement, or at least a side by side with the IRS, is all about. He is saying we are not going to be. We're not going to let other countries dump their prisons into our country or dump their poor into our country that we just take care of like a big welfare state. We're not going to do that anymore. 2, this is the best economic market in the world. If you want to participate in it, it's going to cost you, but you can get filthy rich doing so. I mean, it makes a lot of common sense. I think he's acting in the best interest of his country. like have kind of like a moral issue with it. And I will say that if you spend $5 million to come into a country, you're probably going to respect the absolute heck out of it because it cost you something to get there, and you're gonna reward that. I think his point is it's like the old credit card commercial. Membership has its privileges, and I think his point is citizenship should have privileges. And I will say that I am relieved that somebody finally is protecting my rights as a citizen by valuing citizenship. And that's what Xi Jinping should be doing in China. That's what Modi should be doing in India. That's what Lula should be doing in Brazil.
How do new citizens degrade your citizenship? Because you were saying
because
like it devalues your citizenship is what you were saying.
New citizens may not, but non-citizens being in a country depriving that nation of its resources do, I think, devalue citizenship. Okay, look at New York.
Okay.
I mean, the mayor of New York would agree with me, now. He's actually said this for a number of years. But the number of migrants that went into that city and filled up hotels on taxpayer dollar, filled up their prisons.
There's the problem, right? On taxpayer dollar.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it became a less safe
when there's
place.
a honeypot, the flies. Well, I don't mean to call them flies, but when you have people respond to incentives.
Yeah, exactly. So do I think that New York City is better off with an open border? Of course not. And so do I think that their nation is lessened and their experience in New York City as citizens of New York is lessened because they feel less safe? Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. By the way, I think the same is true of when citizens are allowed to sleep on the streets in San Francisco and people pay $1,300,000 for a little townhome and they feel unsafe going out their front door, with citizens who sleep on I think their citizenship, their lived experience is also devalued. So I don't think any of those things are good.
And my argument is that that's happening on government streets, right? That's happening on the streets. It's not happening in Disneyland, right?
Yeah.
That's not happening in like your apartment complex.
But do you agree with me that like a citizen's experience is devalued when?
Not necessarily. I take Tucker's jelly bean argument, which again, for those of you that don't know, it's like, if you have a bowl full of 30 jelly beans or 100 jelly beans, or 300 jelly beans, however many, and like one, is deadly poisonous, right? Are you going to put that bowl of jelly beans on your kitchen table and just let your kids eat it whenever they want? No. I mean, okay, but we have a bunch of poison jelly beans being born here. I like to view immigration like the golden jelly bean. What if one of those jelly beans has like the cure for cancer, right? America is the best place to foster innovation. It's the best place for technological advancements. Look at the top of the S&P 500, right? Like half of the C-level suite they're all immigrants, right? Like
I don't know.
It is the best.
If you say so.
Yeah, like go look at like the C-suites of
immigrants, as in they came to the United States in the last 10 years.
Sorry. Okay. Immigrants or like first or second generation immigrants. They all come from immigrant families.
Yeah.
Right. Tiger moms.
Well, look, a million people come to America legally every year. Mm-hmm. The argument really isn't about legal immigration. I agree with legal immigration. I'm not saying I think we should end it. I might consider that. What I'm saying is that I'm not sure it's good for those countries. I'm saying selfishly, sure, brain drain all you want. It's better for my country. I mean, yes, it helps us stay innovative. It gets us the brightest people. For example, this one of these Doge kids whose nickname I won't say, but it was provocative. It came out this week that his father was a Russian KGB agent that acted as a double agent and eventually immigrated safely into America.
Yeah, that rules.
Or his grandfather, in the Soviet Union. So, like, that's an example of a Russian, guy, a Soviet guy who's like, I want my family to be in America. He is, and now his like 19-year-old grandkid is, working for Doge, like making our government more efficient. Not a perfect person by any means, but
and while most immigrants probably are not going to contribute that much to society, right? When you get that one or two, America is the best place for fostering innovation and technological advancement.
But
they're not going to do that in Russia. He's not like
his skills would be wasted in Russia.
Bingo.
But what I would prefer, because I'm speaking in ideals here, I would prefer that the smartest people on Earth remain where they were born. They are the flower that blooms where they're planted, and they make their country a better place. If that country won't have them, Fine. Then I guess I'll take him.
Well, Mark Zuckerberg, like this comes down to kind of a G, right? Like an intelligence question. Does G, this theoretical concept of general intelligence that somebody is just born with, right?
Oh, okay.
Mark Zuckerberg had the famous quote that like, you know, there are like 10,000 Einsteins working in rice fields in China, right? Just sheer numbers of population, right?
Yeah.
But like, there's not the opportunity to foster that. They're just stuck in a rice field because that's where their father was and their grandfather was and their grandfather, right? America is the place that offers those people the best opportunity to build something awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I don't know. I like I said, selfishly, I'm fine with it, but I don't know that it's the best thing for the world. So I'm trying. See how magnanimous I'm being.
No, I said the cure for cancer would probably be the best thing for the world, right?
Yeah. Well, or yeah, depending on what causes cancer, but that's a whole other conversation. Okay, this is kind of interesting because actually this is something you and I kind of talk about a lot. This is that Ukraine and U.S. are agreeing to this minerals deal. I will say this. I don't say this very often, but I agree with Zelensky. Okay. Zelensky was like, wait a minute, we'll pay you back. Biden said we were given the money. And I will say for the last several years, I don't remember anyone. I mean, some of the money we gave to Ukraine was like a loan, but I never in a million years assumed we'd ever get it back.
And most of it wasn't money. Right. It was
right. It was us paying Raytheon to send missiles to.
No. It was us paying Raytheon to build new missiles so that we could send our old ones.
Yes.
It's military industrial complex.
And then Ukraine sold the old ones to the Mexican cartels, apparently.
Sometimes.
Maybe not missiles, but other weapons. Anyway. Okay, but that being said, what makes me a little nervous about this sort of thing? I mean, on the whole, it seems reasonable that Americans should we underwrote, we gave all this money or what have you to Ukraine in one form or another. They apparently they got money to fight this war that's been a losing effort. It's time to what do you call that? The sunk cost fallacy, right?
Yeah.
It's time to cut bait. Ukraine's not going to win the war. It's not going to happen. So we need to end the war and get our money back. But it feels like it reminds me of all those times we overthrew governments, like in South America or something. It's like, hey, nice, banana field you got there, Be a shame if your little tin pot dictator took it. So we're going to put a guy in charge who will make sure, and we'll share the proceeds on the bananas.
Yeah. I mean, how many times in the Middle East have we funded a small rebel group to overthrow the dictator, and that small rebel group becomes more bloodthirsty than the dictator? So we fund another small rebel group.
And there's no question. And this is why people who are like, I mean, there's been in certain circles, there's been not a change, but a more public acknowledgement. Even Trump has been more publicly. I mean, he went to war with Zelensky, basically. It's like, we don't have this, look, Ukraine, there was a coup. We oversaw it in 2014.
The Euromaidan revolution.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a color revolution.
Yeah.
I mean, and so give me a break. Like
the Yanukovych government, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the idea that Ukraine is just like pure democracy, I mean, Zelensky's overstayed his democratic welcome for a year and a half. You probably wouldn't be reelected.
Well, hold on. Hold on. You're a big law and order guy, right? Within the laws of the country, they don't hold elections while they're at war. Like, it's written into their laws. And also, logistically, how would you do that when, like, the Donbass is flooded with Russian soldiers? You're gonna let them vote?
Sure.
Like, how? Like,
let everyone gets a vote in democracy. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Logistically, how are you going to do that? Right. Yeah. And
fair.
Zelensky called. Now, I'm no like, when you ask me to call one, or if you ask me to pick one dictator out of all three of these guys, right? I can't pick one, right? Why do I have to just pick one?
You're an anarchist.
Right? I'm an anarchist.
Inherently think they're all dictators.
I think all three of these guys are dictators, right? But
they're definitely all not. They're not all equal.
They're not all equal, which is very interesting. When I wanted to make a point about Zelensky calling Trump's bluff and saying, "Well, I'll resign after the war's over. I'll do it." But Trump called him a dictator, right? Yeah. Which was the bluff that he called. And it's very, very interesting which person Trump ran as a dictator and which one he will refuse to call a dictator.
Yeah.
Right? If you recall the Bill O'Reilly interview.
Well, that's because Putin won, and so you have to deal with him. Zelensky's going to be a footnote of history. Putin's a dictator. Sure, he was elected for he did his maximum 2 terms. Then he handed off to his buddy, and he took a lesser role. And then now he's coming back for that's fine. But the bottom line, this is realpolitik. Okay, he won, and in life. I'm not saying it's good or fair, but Russia won the war. I think that they were right to be bothered by Ukraine wanting to be in NATO and the West flirting with that and the expansion and probably the biolabs we have in Ukraine. I think Ukraine's a cesspool. And so I think actually Russia has legitimate concerns and critiques. I'm not justifying the war. But whatever the reason, I think we goaded Russia into a war. And they said, okay, we'll fight this war. And they won the war.
If the concerns are legitimate, then why is the invasion not justified?
Maybe it is. I mean, a lot of people, I think, are saying that now.
They are. And that seems like one country invaded another, saying, hey, this is ours now. And
you mean like what we did in Iraq?
It is a bit different, right?
Yeah. But it's kind of a preemption.
I agree. I don't
preemption.
Gosh, I hate being the nuance bro. Yes, we invaded Iraq. I don't think we should have.
Yeah.
However, that is night and day different than this. We were not trying to make Iraq the 51st state, right?
Yeah.
We were trying to install, a government that didn't hold, right?
Okay.
The de-Baathification, right? And trying to sort out the Sunni Shia problem in Iraq, where get like a minority controlling the majority. It was just a nonsense nightmare.
Yeah.
But we weren't trying to make it the 51st state. Russia is saying, no, we need the former glory of the Soviet Union. We need all of these old Soviet satellite states to come back. I don't think they're going to...
They're not going to go all the way to
They're not going to take Poland, right?
Right. No, I don't think so.
But
if they did, it would take them 10 years at this rate. It's like the sloggiest military campaign of all time.
Mm-hmm. And super and so bloody. And I hate being nuanced, right? Because there is clearly one country that invaded another. I don't think we should have funded. I hate international, global security guarantees.
Okay, if I come over to you right now and I put my index finger 1 inch from your left eye.
Okay.
How long are you
You're
going to
talking about expansion of NATO, right?
I'm saying if I put my index finger 1 inch from your left eye, how long are you going to tolerate that before you swat it away? And so I think then
I agree. NATO expansion is provocative, right?
Yeah.
But you can okay, for example, right? If your kids come home to you and say, hey, Dad, this dog attacked us and we weren't throwing rocks at it, right? We weren't throwing rocks at this dog. The dog, completely unprovoked, the dog, and we weren't throwing rocks at it, right? You're going to say, what was this?
That's why people shouldn't own pit bulls.
Dude, were you throwing rocks at the dog? You keep saying you weren't, right?
Yeah,
everyone in the mainstream media keeps saying unprovoked. And it's really?
That's State Department.
Provocation, you can want to go at the same time. Russia may have been provoked by NATO and security guarantees. That does not mean they were justified in the invasion.
I hear you.
And Finland, right? Finland borders Russia, right? Yeah. And here's how stupid it is, right? Okay, so Russia. Let's game this out. Russia invades Ukraine, gets Ukraine. Now it is on NATO's border.
Well, Eastern Ukraine, yeah.
Well, now it is on NATO's border, right? If they get all
of Ukraine, if
they get Ukraine, they're on NATO's border.
If I'm not mistaken, Ukraine means borderland. And I think that that's essentially what Russia wants. They wanted a border between East and West. I mean, I understand Finland is NATO and it borders Russia as well. But I don't know. I don't think Putin is on some grand quest to, rebuild the Soviet empire and its satellite states. I just don't think. I do think there was provocation. I think.
Did you listen to the Tucker interview?
With Putin?
Yeah, his 30-minute history lesson at the very beginning saying this all used to be part of Russia.
Yeah. No, I think yes, but Eastern Ukraine in particular, those people speak Russian. They wanted to be within Russia. Well, so, I think that and
we speak English.
There were literal neo-Nazis in the Ukrainian Eastern Front.
And there's a Jewish president, right?
Okay.
I mean,
what, his mom is Jewish? He goes to synagogue?
And what I'm saying is, if I were, being invaded, right, I would probably, and a neo-Nazi picked up and said, we hate those guys too, right? I'm not shooting the neo-Nazi before, I'm not shooting anyone, I'm a pacifist, right? But I don't even think you're shooting the neo-Nazi before you shoot the person breaking into your house.
Yeah.
If you're next door neighbors to a neo-Nazi, and you've got the cartel rolling up and trying to take both your houses, I don't think you're shooting the neo-Nazi before you shoot the cartel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
All I'm saying is, here's what this feels like. We meddled. It went bad for Ukraine, just like we meddled and it went bad for Vietnam, right? Or we meddled and it went bad for, I don't know, Chile. I don't know all my history in the South very South America very well, but you get the idea. We meddle, stuff gets broken, and then we're there to get the oil or to get the minerals, and it feels dirty to me.
It feels so. Trump's bullying about the minerals feels so dirty.
Yeah. However,
It's so gangster.
That said, the white pill possible side of this is that what he's saying is, look, you guys have a bunch of minerals in the ground. We can get them out for you, and you can make a lot of money, and we can make a lot of money. I don't know.
He's saying pay back.
I hope that happens.
Yeah.
But I just read, where was this? Was it this was Britain? Oh man, it's something in the news today. Anyway, there's a long story short. Britain, one of its colonies, had a lot of minerals or something, and they were mining them, and they only gave that host country 6%. And I hope we don't do that. I would love to see, if we go in this deal with Ukraine, I'd love to see the Ukrainian people get rich off the deal, and our companies who have the mining technology can get out of the ground, they get rich. I hope everybody wins, but it does feel a little dirty.
It feels so dirty when we were part of the push in the late 90s to denuclearize all the former Soviet states, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, shoot.
I know. Let me say this, though. The Russian people won World War II. And I'm a patriot, and I love my country. But 20 million Russians died. This is what JFK said pour out a drink or whatever, right? Because I said it. But in June of 1963, go watch his commencement address at American University, where he went off script, basically. In other words, the State Department didn't write a speech for him. And he said, the Russians are our allies. They can be our friends. I think that's part of what got him killed. He said the Russians sacrificed more blood than we can ever imagine, to defeat the Nazis.
They were out of ammunition. They handed soldiers brooms and said, go march that way, pretending like you have a gun.
Yeah,
we have more bodies than you have bullets.
I just get tired of why do we have to hate the Russians? I think it's crazy. I think in many respects they are natural allies to Americans. I think it could happen. I think Trump sees that. And then the whole thing of like how Russia and China are allies, and that's actually not what we want. We actually want Russia to kind of be on our side of that conflict. But
yeah, I don't want to hate any country, right?
Right. Ideally.
And I want to hate every country, right? I'm an anti-war guy, right?
Yeah.
So I'm logically going to be against the one party that's invading the other party, right? Like the country that's invading the other country is clearly in the wrong, right?
Yeah.
However, I don't think America should be funding the country that got invaded either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you. Okay, last story, I think. I stumbled on this on the Christian Post, and it's kind of wild. The article is called Violent Clashes Erupt Among UMC Global Methodist at Nigerian Seminary. And without reading the entire article, there's sort of two sides to the story, but what seems to, these are literal violent clashes involving machetes. Yeah. Anytime I hear that in Africa, I get really, the hair stands up on the back of my neck, right? But these are like seriously violent clashes where I believe people have been severely injured, if maybe not a few people have died. But, and it involves someone that has been in this very room who debated Scott Jones. Scott Jones is the bishop of the Global Methodist Church in America. He debated my good friend Aaron Wright on Methodism and Calvinism and whether it's the Methodist doctrine that human perfection is attainable this side of heaven is theologically defensible. So I know Mr. Jones a little bit, Bishop Jones, and anyway, so what seems to have happened is that let me just a step back. In the Methodist understanding of church, when you leave the United Methodist Church, essentially they keep the property. Okay, so this happens in other churches as well. Obviously, the Roman Catholic Church owns its churches; the congregation doesn't. The Episcopal Church, same. And so, as you've had issues like homosexuality come into the church, and you've had these splits, you'll have groups of people who want to leave the Methodist Church, the Episcopal Church, but the Methodist or Episcopal Church generally speaking, will say, well, you group of people can leave, but
You
we
can't
keep
take
the
the
property.
building. Yeah.
And so in our case, because our church left the ELCA, we could keep the property if 2/3 of our members voted in the affirmative to leave.
I like
so there was kind of a that was negotiated at the merger of the ELCA in 1988, or in the 80s. But anyway, so what seems to happen is that the statements don't align, but basically one group of people is accusing the other people of sort of like being on property that they shouldn't be on, and then people are getting really mad. And depending on who you believe, the UMC people are being aggressive or the GMC people are being aggressive. I'd encourage you to read the article for yourself at the Christian Post. But I guess my white pill is that in America, we had a UMC, GMC split over the last couple of years. I think about a quarter of the UMC, about 25%, maybe more people, but that number of churches did leave the UMC or something like that. If I'm wrong, Meredith, I apologize. But at least in America, it didn't come down to machetes. So this just kind of blew my mind that Methodists are really going at it.
Over what topic?
Well, it's basically homosexuality.
Yeah, which is illegal in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And one can only wonder which group are the gun-wielding, machete-wielding thugs, right?
Is that sarcastic, or are you?
I mean, do you think it's the pro-gay marriage people that are wielding machetes? Probably not.
I would think not.
I would think not, too. And isn't that a shame, right? I wish zero Christians would wield machetes. I wish they would,
for sure.
I wish they would.
I'm not. Please understand. I'm not defending that. Yeah,
I wish they would beat them into plowshares.
Yeah.
It is just frustrating that we know which side. Like we know which side is holding the machete.
Yeah. I will say this though, and we'll kind of wrap it up here. But I think that this practice of retaining the property when you know the people sort of are against what you're about is just morally wrong. Because I mean, my dad's church, for example, big church, and they left and they had to pay $1 million. Even having left within a window where it was acceptable to leave, because the UMC in America gave like a 2-year window where you could leave and keep your property. Okay, they tried to do that to kind of get this out of the way, but they still had to pay like $1 million for some kind of money owed to whatever, and they paid it, to get out of from under the UMC. But think about those people that supported that building for, I don't know, 100 years.
Yeah.
All the utility bills paid, the property insurance they paid, obviously the mortgage or construction costs, the repairs when a tornado knocked down the steeple onto Main Street, and on and on. I mean, the millions and millions and millions of dollars that those people wrote checks in the offering plate every week to keep that building going, for the conference to just come in and say, that's ours. That is bull. And sorry to my Methodist friends who aren't here to defend the practice, but I think it absolutely is going to lead to resentment, and it's just not a Christian way to go about it. It's just part company already and let people take what they want, and let some people go and take this property and let other people go and take this property, and it'll get sorted out. Yeah.
So you're siding with the pro-gay marriage people? I'm kidding. But no, my anarchy extends to church leadership too.
Oh, okay.
I really, really don't like international church denomination hierarchies. That really gets under my skin.
Yeah.
Personally, I think most churches are too big.
Probably true. Well, okay, I think we're out of time. It was fun. People can find you at Theology by the Pint, and this will come out very soon. And so our next event is Tuesday night here at First Lutheran. It's on neo-paganism, and I believe a Christian witch will be speaking at that event. So you won't want to miss it. Go to theologybythepint.org to learn more. Donate. Actually, seriously, in all seriousness, like all this is done, like we're all volunteers. A little bit of money goes a long way. $50 a month to Theology by the Pint gets you into every single event that we hold. So, you get something back in return. But do think about supporting Theology by the Pint. It is very much appreciated. Thumbs up on YouTube, subscribing, commenting on YouTube videos. I know we don't have the best, production values. Apologies for that. Here, KinCam. Boom, look at that. So there you go. We just changed camera views for the audio listeners so that we have high production values. Anyway, anything helps. We appreciate it. And until next time, we encourage you to question freely, think deeply, and disagree as needed.
Peace.